Hello guys, this will be another video that I train my reading English or my English in general. As you can see, this is a book, Homo Deus, from the author Yuval Noah Harari. And the last time I've read it to the page number 3. Now I will continue to read the next part. Again, I do not want to have any trouble with the copyright, so maybe I will make these videos into a playlist, and then if there is any trouble I can switch in to private. Nobody can see that. Anyway, let's get into it. The last part we talk about plague, famine, and war, the three things that people used to struggle to deal with, and at present in the modern days human beings have done a fantastic job to control these three things really well. And what's next for us? That's the question that the author he asked us in the last part. The next part, titled The Biological Poverty Line. Let's get into it. Again, the biological poverty line. Let's start with famine, which for thousands of years has been humanity's worst enemy. Until recently, most humans lived on the very edge of the biological poverty line, below which people succumbed to malnutrition and hunger. A small mistake or a bit of bad luck could easily be a death sentence for an entire family or village. If heavy rains destroyed your wheat crop, or robbers carried off herd, your goat herd, you and your loved ones may well have starved to death. Misfortune or stupidity on the collective level resulted in mass famines. When severe drought hit ancient Egypt or medieval India, it was not uncommon that 5 or 10% of the population perished. Provisions became scarce, transport was too slow and expensive to import sufficient food, and governments were far too weak to save the day. Open any history book and you are likely to come across horrific accounts of famished populations driven mad by hunger. In April 1694, a French officer in the town of Beauvais described the impact of famine and of soaring food prices, saying that his entire district was now filled with an infinite number of poor souls, weak from hunger and wretchedness and dying from want because, having no work or occupation, they lacked the money to buy bread. Seeking to prolong their lives a little and somewhat to appease their hunger, these poor folk eat such unclean things as cats and flesh of horses flayed and cast on to dung heaps. As a consume, the blood that flows when cows and oxen are slaughtered, and the offal that cooks through into the streets. At the poor wretches eat eat nettles and weeds, or roots and herbs, which they boil in water. Similar scenes took place all over France. Bad weather had ruined the harvests throughout the kingdom in the previous 2 years, so that by the spring of 1694, the granaries were completely empty. The rich charged exorbitant prices for whatever food they managed to hold, and the poor died in droves. About 2.8 million French, 50% of the population, starved to death between 1692 and 1694, while the Sun King Louis XIV was doling with his mistresses in Versailles. The following year, 1695, famine struck Estonia, killing a fifth of the population. In 1696, it was the turn of Finland, where a quarter to a third of people died. Scotland suffered from severe famine between 1695 and 1698, some districts losing up to 20% of their inhabitants. Most readers probably know how it feels when you miss lunch, when you fast on some religious holiday, or when you live for a few days on vegetable shakes as part of new wonder diet. But how does it feel when you haven't eaten for days on end and you have no clue where to get the next morsel of food? Most people today have never experienced this excruciating torment. Our ancestors, alas, knew it only too well. When they cried to God, deliver us from famine, this is what they had in mind. During the last 100 years, techn- technological, technological, economic, and political developments have created an increasingly safety net separating robust safety net separating humankind from the biological poverty line. Mass famines still strike some areas from time to time, but they are exceptional, and they are almost always caused by human politics rather than by natural catastrophes. There are no longer natural famines in the world. There are only political famines. If people in Syria, Sudan, or Somalia starve to death, it is because some politician wants them to. In most parts of the planet, even if a person has lost his job and all of his possessions, he is unlikely to die from hunger. Private insurance schemes, government agencies, and international NGOs may not rescue him from poverty, but they will provide him with enough daily calories to survive. On the collective level, the global trade network turns droughts and floods into business opportunities and makes it possible to overcome shortages quickly and cheaply. And makes it possible to overcome food shortages quickly and cheaply. Even when wars, earthquakes, or tsunamis devastate entire countries, international efforts usually succeed in preventing famine. Though hundreds of millions still go hungry almost every day, in most countries, very few people actually starve to death. Poverty certainly causes many other health problems, and malnutrition and malnutrition, malnutrition shortens life expectancy even in the richest countries on earth. In France, for example, 6 million people, about 10% of the population, suffer from nutritional insecurity. They wake up in the morning not knowing whether they will have anything to eat for lunch. They often go to sleep hungry, and the nutrition they do obtain is unbalanced and unhealthy. Lots of starch, sugar, and salt, and not enough protein and vitamins. Protein and vitamins. Yet nutritional insecurity is in famine, and France of the early 21st century is in France of 1694. Even in the worst slums around Beauvais or Paris, people don't die because they have not eaten for weeks on end. The same transformation has occurred in numerous other countries, most notably, most notably China. For millennia, famine stalked every Chinese regime from the Yellow Emperor to the Red Communists. A few decades ago, China was a byword for food shortages. Tens of millions of Chinese starved to death during the disastrous Great Leap Forward, and experts routinely predicted that the problem would only get worse. In 1974, in 1974, the first World Food Conference was convened in Rome, and delegates were treated to apocalyptic, to apocalyptic, to apocalyptic scenarios. They were told that there was no way for China to feed these billion people, and that the world's most populous country was heading towards catastrophe. In fact, it was heading towards the greatest economic the greatest economic miracle in history. Since 1974, hundreds of millions of Chinese have been lifted out of poverty, and though hundreds of millions more still suffer greatly from privation, from privation and malnutrition, for the first time in its recorded history, China is now free from famine. Indeed, in most countries today, overeating has become a far more worse problem than famine. In the 18th century, Marie Antoinette allegedly advised the starving masses that if they ran out of bread, they should just eat cake instead. Today, the poor are following this advice to the letter, whereas the rich residents of Beverly Hills eat lettuce salad and steamed tofu with quinoa. In the slums and ghettos, the poor gorge on Twinkie cakes, Cheetos, hamburgers, and pizza. In 2014, more than 2.1 billion people were overweight, compared to 550 million who suffered from malnutrition. Half of humankind is expected to be overweight by 2030. In 2010, famine and malnutrition combined killed about 1 million people, whereas obesity killed 3 million. Oh, that is 3 more pages from the book Homo Deus from the author Yuval Noah Harari. Well, I really believe that there are so many words that I do not know the meaning, so I missed a lot of opportunities to spell right. Anyway, I really believe that training like this, even when I do not watch the videos again, I have to be honest, I do not have so much time to review my videos, but just read it out and try to figure out which are the words that I am still weak in and which I can improve. I really believe that it will help. And that's for today's video. I will try to read this book continuously, try to learn the new words and the new ways to express my ideas, my emotions, everything in English. I hope that you guys are still learning out there. I will see you next time. Peace out.